Why not create a future that I can grow into that's better for me based on the skill sets, the values that I have, the beliefs that I can create? Why not create something that gives me a future that I actually love to live versus one based on circumstance from a past that half of it may be bullshit that I keep reinforcing?
Michael, firstly, welcome to the Coaches Collective podcast. Really excited to get you on today, mate.
Yeah, awesome. I'm stoked to be here.
I was saying to Matt, obviously having done your courses in the past, and I've really enjoyed now, I guess, in your words, I know you as being incredible in terms of human performance and coaching. I know you coach a lot of very successful people in business. And one of the reasons why I love sharing a little bit about your story too, and I'd love you to give us some context, but you were a PT in a past life. So as you know, a lot of the people on our podcast are PTs or allied health professionals, and all wanting to go online. So, mate, I'd love you for a bit of context. Just share a little about you, your background, and I guess, why should people be listening to you?
They probably shouldn't listen to me. That's the thing. But the reason why I guess someone may want to listen to what I have to say is that I guess I came from a background where I grew up in lower socioeconomic area. My mum was 17 when she had me. Dad was 19. We grew up sort of semi in the hood. And I just realized that I was a poor kid at school and used to get picked on for not having the proper basketball shoes. Like I'd go play basketball in aero sports shoes. It was like having bricks taped to my fucking feet. I hope you don't mind if I swear. But
absolutely not.
Good. So I was a poor kid. We went to a private school, but Dad worked 2 jobs just to pay for it. Mum was working flat out as well. I used to go pick my sister up from kindergarten and walk her home when I was in grade 1 of school and make her like food. So, I remember thinking back then, like, this isn't the life that I want to live. Like, I want to be like the other kids. And so I was always trying to fit in. And then we would go away on weekends because my parents were young. We would go away every weekend and party. So we would go away up into the Riverland, ride motorbikes, like dirt bikes, do crazy shit. Like they'd have friends and stuff who would jump BMX bikes over, huge fire, like bonfires and stuff like that. So it was fucking wild. Like it was hectic. So I grew up wakeboarding, water skiing, barefooting. Like it was, looking back now, it was like amazing. But as a kid, you go to school on Monday and everyone's played sport on the weekend. You're like the kid that doesn't fit in. Like, how do you tell your friends or the kids at school, like all the crazy shit that happened on the weekend? Like, everyone drunk like 4 cartons of beer each and just got absolutely paralytic and threw up on themselves. And then you rode dirt bikes. Like, how do you, so it was pretty wild, but, I just didn't really have a place. And then at school, I was always in trouble. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that, but I was put into special classes. And, I know, I struggle with focus even to this day in certain areas. In other areas, I'm a weapon at it, like most people with ADHD anyway. So I really struggled at school. 15, I got expelled, and I just wanted to end it all. I was thinking, like, I don't fit in at school. I'm always in fucking trouble. I get home, I get blasted by mum for, doing all the wrong things all the time. And all I really wanted to do was hang out with people and make money. And so even from a young age, I'd started a business. Like I realized that mum and dad's friends were all drunk on Sunday morning still with hangovers. The last thing that they wanted to do at a party was to do all the dishes. So I would walk around and collect gold coins from everyone and make about 30 or 40 bucks and just wash all the dishes. So, from a young age, I was a bit of a weapon when it came to like trying to figure out how to get cash because I wanted to buy basketball shoes.
Opportunistic.
Yeah, I just wanted to buy basketball shoes. I didn't want to be the pop kid. So, I did that. And, at 15, I wanted to end my life. And I just realized in the moment where I was about to end it all that I was living based on trying to make other people happy. And that really the key thing was I just had to figure out what made me happy. And that was sort of like my first wake up call to life. So I ended up going back to school at a different school, finished off grade 12, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I love figuring out how things work. I've always been super inquisitive, always asked way too many questions, and always spoke way too much. My uncle used to call me Yap Yap because he said I was like a little barking dog that never just shut the fuck up. By the time I finished school...
Probably the roughest part yet.
Nah, it was perfect because, every report card I had, I think from reception to grade 12 said Michael talks too much. Now, if I told the teachers now that I made millions from talking, I think it would have been quite interesting. But anyway, so that ended up happening, became a diesel mechanic. I love working on cars. I still love cars. I don't like working on them anymore, but I do love cars. And I got into working on mining equipment, heavy mining equipment for Caterpillar or CavPower, the dealership here in South Australia. Did that for a while, realized I fucking hated it. I love learning about how they worked, but I hated working on them. And it just sucked. And every day guys would come to work. They're going up to the mines. And this was at the start of the mining boom in South Australia. Like now mining is sort of like a normalized thing. Back then it wasn't. It was like you go to the mines, you're away from your family, you're away from your friends. And so I just realized that all these dudes were going up there making shitloads of coin. And then they would come back. You'd ask them on Monday, how's your weekend? Oh, it was fucked. How's the missus? Oh, she's fucked. How are the kids? Oh, they're fucked. And it was just like their whole life was just shit. And so it started challenging my perception around money and making money. I thought life got better the more money you made, but really what had happened was their life got more shit the more money they made because they were doing things that either they had a bit of a fantasy or delusion around what they should be doing instead of what they were doing. A lot of the guys actually liked working away in the mines, but I think having a fantasy or a delusion around what else they could be doing or what else they should be doing tends to make people feel shit about the things that they're currently doing. So that was one of the things. And I started noticing that depression rates were going up, suicide rates were going up and things like that. And I thought, I just don't want to be here. I was in that negative spot when I was 15. I just didn't want to go back there. And I was starting to think about what else I could do. And I remember opening up the newspaper and flicking through. And I've from about 13 or 14, I started exercising and training because I was a fat kid. And so I loved exercising, lifting weights. So my dad played sort of semi-professional football. He was in the South Australian Football League or the SANFL, and he also played state level cricket as well. He hated training, so he used to do really well on game day, but he'd get dropped from the team because he wouldn't rock up to training and stuff like that. He was a bit lazy.
Natural athlete.
Yeah. He was very talented and very gifted, but I think he just never put in the effort. So anyway, I knew that I loved training and I loved exercising and I loved figuring out how the body worked. And I thought I wanted to do massage. And so I was just looking through the newspaper to figure out how I could learn how to do it. And this ad popped up and it said, want to be a personal trainer. And there was an ad for the TAFE, like to go to TAFE. And back then it was an 18-month course, after hours course to become a personal trainer. It wasn't, it was pretty hardcore, to do a diploma in fitness, I think was 2 years. So, I ended up going to TAFE and applied to, study again. But I was fucking shitting myself. Like, it was one of the scariest moments. All these thoughts came up about being the dumb kid, being put back in a special class, failing, all of this stuff. And here I am going to work for 10 hours a day, leaving and going to night school to be able to learn to be a personal trainer. Like, it brought up all my fears and shit. So anyway, I started doing it, and all of a sudden I'm a straight A student. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I've gone from the drop kick at school to straight A student. And I just found something that I really loved. I loved helping people. I loved figuring out how to get improvements for myself and others around me. I just loved the environment of it. So anyway, I got signed off my diesel mechanic apprenticeship a year early. The boss said to me, you're doing good job times. It's we'll sign you off your apprenticeship. And I just remember feeling sick. Like, this is it. This is as good as life's going to get. And I sat thinking about it for about an hour, and I almost felt like I was going to throw up on myself. And I just grabbed a bit of paper. I walked into the boss's office and I said, I'm leaving. And he said, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm out of here. And he goes, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but it's not this. And the head of the company was I'd left the Caterpillar dealership and I was working for a trucking company. So this guy's probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if not a billionaire. This little old Italian guy who owns a trucking company comes out and he goes, Michael, don't end up like the rest of these fuckers. Go do what you love. Put the toolbox in the car, drove to mum, dad's house, unpacked the toolbox. Mum burst into tears. What are you going to do with your life? If you just stick at it, 10 years time, you'll be able to get married, have kids. You'll have everything, investment properties, the white picket fence. And I was like, Mum, in 10 years, I'll be dead. Like, I would have knocked myself off by then.
Fuck that. Yep.
And what I forgot to mention was my best friend's 3-year-old niece was killed in a car accident about a year before that. And that was really where I started thinking about life, that we're here one day and it can just go like that. And for her, I just remember thinking that, she never even got to live. And this was my chance to live. And I don't think I'd ever really properly lived up to that point. I was always living for everybody else. And so, I left mum and dad's house. I drove to the gym that I trained at and I said, look, I'll do anything. I'll clean toilets. Like, just give me a foot in the door. And they said, well, funny enough, there's a desk shift. And that was like back in the old days of barcodes where you had to scan everyone's barcodes when they came in. And half the time the barcode scanner didn't work. So you had to type it in the little keypad. But within a month, I knew everybody at the gym. Like I used to train with a lot of the guys, but I knew everybody. So I'd hang in the morning and play with the kids and the mums would come in and I'd have coffee with them, and then the old geezers would come at 1:00, to do their Strength for Life courses. I just loved being in the fucking gym. I loved being around people. I loved seeing them do better. And I just love that environment. So, fast forward from there, I just kept learning and learning and learning. And I helped build a franchise system that we took out to other small independent gyms, which was called Push Training. We rebranded, helped with the rebrand of the gym that I was at. And so I did that, got into a management position there. And with the franchise system, I had to go out and I had to start teaching people, teaching other personal trainers about what we do and how we do programming and everything like that. And man, I even though I shat my pants every time I spoke and every time I had to get in front of people, like my ass would quiver. At the same time, I just fucking loved it. Like I just loved seeing that I could help people who wanted to help people. And that was it. That was my foot in the door of speaking. From there, I worked there for about 5 years. I got poached by Fitness First when it came to Adelaide and went and worked there for a year. And then I got poached by a medical center because I used to work with I used to train a physiotherapist and I used to do a lot of referrals with them. This was back in the old days. Like we're talking, I don't know if you guys remember, but like 20 years ago, personal trainers there was a couple of types of personal trainers. You had like the aerobics, instructor. This was like, but I think even before like body pump and shit like that was popular. So they were like
bodybuilders.
Yeah, they were them. They were the bodybuilders and the juice heads, or they were essentially like this, I would say the unprofessional athletes that would walk in their like thongs and footy shorts, having a dart, and then they, and then they come in the gym, they just lift weights. It was a fucking schmozzle, it wasn't. Yeah. Now personal trainers it's a professional field. Back when I was there, it was a fucking joke. Like you talk to a physio about a personal trainer and it was like, if physios wanted more work, they would tell people to go to a personal trainer because they would know that personal trainers would injure everybody. So they'd get more work. Like that was literally that was literally the cycle of health professionals working with personal trainers. It was pretty bad. Now, back then I would go to Filex. I would study I studied heaps from Paul Check and, I'm a Check level, I think I'm a level 3. I did, his NLC courses or his holistic lifestyle practitioner. I think I'm level 3 or level 4, whatever the top one was.
We literally would have been in the same courses. The weirdest part, Matt, is that your story. So Michael, before you get into the business part, and I don't want to because I want to stay around the PT and I'd love to see because PTs in our world, they evolve and they're getting a lot more into coaching, right? Yep. So I would love to share how that's evolved. I guess one of the things just on your story, which is really interesting, and I say so much like I got diagnosed ADHD about 6 months ago. Whether that's a thing, again, it's definitely, it made sense. I got kicked out of class, same as you, was always the one that was distracting all my mates and kind of causing drama. So I got kicked out and then it was awesome because I didn't want to be in the class anyway. But in saying that, I guess, on that story, and so much of you, a couple of lessons I got then were I know that you had young parents, but obviously you were kind of, when your parents shared the story of the white picket fence and where you kind of wanted to go. And I've certainly fell into the external validation, making my dad proud, wanting to go to university, didn't know what the fuck I want to do, did a Bachelor of Commerce degree, of which I didn't fucking like it. And I, in fact, the worst was maths and I became a financial planner, right? Which is funny. But in saying that, a lot of PTs are misfits. They're coaches. Like they didn't plan to be a PT. If I had followed my dream, I would have learned about the body and the stuff that I love and like you obsess about and amazing at. And so in terms of the stories that PTs come into the industry with, right? If they're They tried other things, that wasn't the thing, then they kind of fall into PT. And a lot of the common stories that we see is, for example, the not feeling smart enough or enough, right? Now, obviously, this then stems into so many areas of their life and where they tend to play small. And I know I want to talk a lot today about this whole idea of mental discipline, but I guess in terms of being the naughty boy, in terms of not fitting in and those stories, you obviously see a lot because you've worked a lot with PTs and you've been one. So what are the common, I guess, either stories, and again, I'd love to get into your philosophy of how you coach people forward, because they go down the route of coaching, they go down the route of feeling like they're broken and looking at traumas and things. But how do you understand them? How would you help, or what are the common things that you see in terms of these PTs and what's limiting them or keeping them stuck?
Can I finish off my story? Because I think that will relate to this, because I think there's a gap of how I got into this. Sorry. But I definitely want to answer that question because it's an awesome question. So from Fitness First, when I worked there, that's when I opened up to all the Czech stuff and started learning under Donald Carr, who was one of the top Czech guys. But then I got poached to work in a medical center. And so I essentially got a studio in a medical center where I was able to do what I wanted. And so I did a lot of physical rehab, sports conditioning. It was awesome. I got to work with physios, doctors, all of that stuff. Like, it was a dream. But when I was in there, I worked in there for about 3 years where, I'd operated as a business owner under their banner. And I also brought in the guy who's now the strength and conditioning coach for the Adelaide 36ers. He was one of the first PTs that I mentored back in the original gym that I worked at, who then I poached to come to Fitness First with me and then across the medical center. And he was super inquisitive as well. So when I was working in the medical center, I loved it, but I realized that there was a massive gap. And that gap was that most people know what to do, they just don't fucking do it. And that made me really realize that the biggest gap that most people have isn't in their physical performance or what they do day to day, as in their actions. It has everything to do with what's going on inside their head. And I remember sitting down with a psychologist in the medical center, and I said, "Look, tell me more about this mindset stuff." Now, back prior to that, I remember doing mindset as a PT and having to watch all these videos about psychology and stuff. And I just thought, why the fuck are we watching this shit? Like, I just want to go train and lift heavy weights. I was a bit of a jughead. All I wanted to do was just be shredded for stereos and just make people throw up when I train them. That was my ignorance back when I first became a PT. So I started diving in and asking questions like, why are people depressed? And she would say things like, well, it's probably their environment. And I'm like, well, hang on. You get two kids, same household, same upbringing, same parents. One ends up depressed and suicidal and the other one ends up a millionaire. How does that work? And it was always like there was some bullshit that was spoken, right? There was never anything conclusive. Now, I am very philosophical, so I love reading philosophy. I've spent millions of dollars on studying and finding the smartest people around the world to learn from. You can see my book collection behind me. So I read everything from books on quantum physics and particle physics right through to chemistry to biology to a lot of the great philosophers back there and all different types of people. I want to study great people. And that stuff didn't sit well with me. Like answers like, well, it's just the environment. Is it really? And why? Why one person goes one way? Why doesn't the other go the other way? And then I would hear things like it's a chemical imbalance, which is awesome because now it's been shown that theory is, I won't say fully debunked, but it's being challenged quite heavily in the scientific field. So I would hear things like, well, it's a chemical imbalance. And I go, well, why though? There's got to be a reason why there's a chemical imbalance. Well, it's just genetic. Okay, well, isn't that fucking convenient that, for 30 years, everything's been okay. And now 30 years later, it's not okay. Like, what happened? There's got to be a trigger. There's got to be a mechanism. There has to be something that does it, and that stuff fascinates me, I think about that stuff. Like, why is it that someone can not have breast cancer, but then all of a sudden one day they're rubbing around and the next second it's like, bang, there's a lump there. How did that happen? Was it there yesterday? Was it not there? Was it there a week ago? Or did it just form within a 24-hour period? Is it something that has been growing and has just not been noticed? Like, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm inquisitive enough to want to know. And so anyway, I then jumped in and started studying NLP. So I did 3 different master practitioner courses with NLP. And then what I realized was that every coach that was teaching NLP who said we have the latest shit was literally fucking lying, because they were all teaching the same shit. All they'd done is they just changed the name of the thing, and they all studied the same stuff, right? So they all went and did Tony Robbins. These days, like, everyone does Dispenza. It's like coaches tend to follow the same types of people. They go through periods of like where shit's fashionable and cool. Like right now, everyone's doing ice baths and breath work and all that. It's like you see these trends that happen and everyone does it. So when you get that information, even though they say ours is the latest and greatest and the most updated, it's probably the same shit that most other people are doing anyway or studied in the environment. So you've got to be years ahead of that stuff, not behind that. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm just saying that, everyone says that we have the best stuff, but I don't know whether they do. But anyway, so I started diving into all that stuff and studying it. So then I started traveling all around the world, learning from the people way smarter than me, from neuroscientists to, I was doing Dispenza's stuff like 12, 13 years ago, back when he wasn't even known. Dr. John DeMartini's a good friend of mine. Like, I talked to him, and his daughter's a really close friend of mine. So I talked to them quite a lot. Tony Robbins, I did their shit like 20 years ago, and their top head trainer was one of my original mentors. So, I started learning a lot of that stuff and realizing that it was way more than, like, if you want to make money, it's not about the actions that you do, it's how you think about it. And how you think about it then becomes the way you feel about it and how you behave. And so there tends to be this feedback loop. And then I also started realizing that the majority of things that are stopping people is their perceptions of everything. And it's not, there's all this stuff out there about limiting beliefs, but a belief is a perception in the first place. And if you don't collapse perceptions, then you'll still keep having those beliefs, and it takes a lot of work to change it. So there are easier ways to do things. It's just that the industry is probably about 20 years behind the science. And so I just wanted to be at the forefront of the science. So that's why I've studied a lot. So that's my story. And I guess during that time, I created Mojo Human Performance Institute. Now we have Mojo Business Multiplier. Now I'm a shareholder in some medical clinics and stuff like that. We run business courses. So now I guess I'm more entrepreneurial, still love the mindset stuff. I think it's the biggest gap that most people have in their life. Actually, it is the biggest gap that people have. And I just want to help people perform better.
Matt, I know I'd love your take when we bring this to PTs. I guess one thing about that story was I've really enjoyed when I got into your stuff was just you cut through a lot of the bullshit. I don't want to poo-poo certain things, but as I said, mate, I know a lot of people who've done NLP and who are even teachers who they seem to like still coach people from saying like I am like their trauma. And it just, to me, is like, I don't see that they keep, it means that obviously their identity still is that thing. So they're not really evolving from it.
Yep.
You have
is that a common thing? You
have anxiety. You have ADHD.
Yeah. I have had Hashimoto's, so they bring it up all the time as like an excuse. Is that a common thing with NLP out of interest?
I don't think it's NLP. I think it's just society, and this is why, like, for me, our target audience is like our community is called the driven mofos, because I don't work with people that want to play below the line or want to sit in the average line. And in order to not be average, it means you can't do common things. And what's common may be normal, but what's normal is pretty fucked. And like, part of my French, but when you look at it, like, the majority of Australians don't have savings. So if you want to fit in, that's cool, but you're essentially going to live your life broke. You're going to need superannuation in order to retire. That's if you've got any. The government are going to blow most of that anyway, and same as the superannuation funds, because they essentially get free money to play with. And the way that bonus structures are rewarded and shit like that. So that's probably not a good idea. When I look at health, our healthcare system is a sick care system. Everyone knows that. Like, I go and get my bloods done every half year. I would like to get them done every quarter, but you know how fucking hard it is to go to a doctor and get them every quarter. And things like, I get pulled aside sometimes, and it's like, you can't get your testosterone and shit tested all the time because it starts raising red flags, and the AMA can get onto this stuff, and like, promoting testosterone replacement therapy. Not that I have it, but like, all of that stuff is just all bullshit. If I have cancer, they're happy to drop $100,000 on me. But if I'm looking after my health, they don't want to spend fucking $20 or $100 on a test. You know what I mean? Like, we just have a sick care system. We've got this thing called a mental health system. It's not mental health, it's mental destruction. You know, like we're diagnosing people with all these labels that are essentially destroying their lives because now that's the identity that they have and that they live by. And I understand why we do it. Like one of the quotes that I've said in all my events for the last like 10 years is that labels are there to understand. They're not there to define. I'm not defined by the fact that I may or may not have ADHD. Like who gives a fuck whether I have ADHD? The truth is, how do I use what I have in order to kick ass and to push me ahead? Like every strength is also a weakness. You know, I assume that we all like going to the gym. That's a strength, but it's also a weakness. Like I can spend an hour and a half every day doing other shit. Like I could spend that hour and a half building my business and I'll probably have more money. So every strength is a weakness and every weakness has the potential to become a strength. So it depends on how you use it. Like I have people all the time who come to my events and they're like, you know, I've got this past trauma. And I'm like, yeah, cool. And they're like, yeah, but, and I'm like, and someone else has that same fucking thing and they are crushing goals. They are kicking your ass. They are living it up and you're stuck and fucked. What do you want to do? How do you want to play this game? Now, most people don't like hearing that because most people would rather fit in. There's an amazing part of Cash Flow Quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki, and he says there are three ways when people think about money. You either want to be safe, you want to be comfortable, you want to be rich. Now, everyone says they want to be rich, but the hand that they play is that most people want to be safe or they want to be comfortable at best. And when you look at how most people play, they play the safety game. They don't want to invest stuff because they might lose it. That's safe. That's not rich. Rich people don't play like that. Now, the reason why I use that is because when you look at most people, they say, I want to live an extraordinary life. I want to do extraordinary things, but I want to play the card that gets me accepted by the majority of my peers, which are average, stuck, and fucked. How do you want to live life? Like, you know, I'm being pretty critical here because hopefully for one person, just one person listening to this podcast, they sit there and they're like, this guy's onto something and I'm sick of playing on the back foot and I'm sick of playing small and it's time to step up. The hardest thing that you're ever going to do is look yourself in the mirror and just say, I'm not where I want to be and I'm the fucking problem, but I'm also the solution. Until that day, you're never going to move forward. I can blame everything. I can blame my childhood. I can blame all that shit, but it's also the reason why I'm successful. Like the reason why I'm awesome at business now and why I push hard. Well, when I say awesome, to an extent, there's levels, right? But I'm probably in the top 5% of income earners in this country. Why? Because of my childhood. I got brought up in an environment where I didn't fit in. Now people are important to me. The way people think are important to me. I use that as my strength. I'm super unfocused and undisciplined in most areas of my life. But in the things that I'm extremely, that I love, I put so much attention in and so much focus. And anyone with ADHD knows that the term attention deficit disorder is just absolute dog shit in itself, because every person with ADHD has a superpower of extreme focus, but they also have this distraction, right?
Michael, please expand upon this, because I think the depth behind this is the values, which you opened my, I hadn't done DeMartini stuff. You opened me to that world. It was like, it made every amount of sense why I fucking love learning and growth, for example, as one of my highest values, just like you. And having done almost everything you've done, check, all the way through to business coaching, mentoring, etc., and wanting to learn, because it was like, I'm okay, I just want to get better. I want to learn the real shit, the stuff that works, right? Yep. So talk about that, because they play small. And again, also what you bring up is like this whole, you know, the whole, like Grant Cardone, for example, poor family, and talks about, well, that's why he wanted to be fucking rich, because he fucking had nothing. And he want, you know, so everything is a useful belief, whether you want to play and be the poor person or you want to be rich and wealthy. So how do we help people, explain values as it relates to, you know, you living your highest purpose, and how people kind of step out of, you know, the story of being poor, for example.
Can I add to that as well, brother?
Yeah.
Because something that I've noticed coming up so far, like a really common theme, is that you've consistently chosen to adopt beliefs and ways of viewing things that are useful, but not necessarily true. You've chosen the viewpoint that serves you instead of what truth is, right? Or what the facts say, or what, you know, the other people say, right? And I wanted to kind of like add that, because that was one of the main things that I wanted to talk about that you were bringing up. I picked up on it in your story. I picked up on it through multiple parts. This idea between what's true and what's useful seems to be a common theme that I hear, you know, not talking directly about, but something that you've been, that you definitely have embodied as well.
just to clarify, when you say truth, what do you mean by the word truth in that example?
Like they talk about I have ADHD or whatever, a diagnosis, right? That may be true, right? But is that useful to you? What's the empowering belief here? Is it to believe that you are a sick person with ADHD or whatever, that you have a disadvantage? Or is it to believe that ADHD is a superpower?
Yeah, okay. That's why I like to clarify. So from studying a lot of philosophies and also a lot of great scientists over the years, the only real there are a couple of things that if you study great thinkers, they will talk about truth as being love, wisdom, inspiration, something called true potentiality, which is like we can be whatever really we want to be or however we want to live. So there seems to be this common theme of truth, and so that's what that's a path that I go down in order to try to discover. When we look at the difference between love and passion, just before I move on to talking about values and everything, the word love at its core means balance. So the word balance can be exchanged for the word love, which could be exchanged for the word inspiration. And when we're talking about love, like a parent who loves their kids knows that their kids is their greatest dream, but also their worst nightmare. Now, parents won't say that, but that's what they know, right? Now, building a business is the worst thing that you can do, but also the best thing I think you can do as a person, for me personally, because of my high values. But that's because every day it's both a dream and a nightmare. It's both challenging and supportive. It gives me maximum growth. But it's not easy. Now,
triggers every fucking thing that you actually have, every story.
Yep. Because you have to self-reflect, right? So that's what the mystics and the great philosophers and the great scientists call love. And even Einstein talks about this idea of love. Now, when you go back and you read books like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius and you read the great philosophers, they talk about avoiding passions. And even Aristotle talks about this idea of a golden mean, or this place of balance, which is love. But he also talks about these other things that humans have as an experience that we chase, which are imbalances, and we can call them passions. So the real etymology or the meaning of the word passion is to suffer. Because when we chase things that are exciting, fun, joyful, and we have these elated states, they come back to bite us in the ass, and eventually we realize that there's just as many negatives as there are benefits. I don't know, back in the past, if you've ever gone out and you've slept with someone that just because you just want a quick root, and then afterwards you're like, the guilt and the shame kicks in and you're like, oh man, why did I do that? But it's like, at the moment it was exciting and it was fun. And so that's passion, right? So I like to really clarify that. So I go and I try to look for truths in things, but then when we're talking about the human experience, because of our perceptions, what we believe is truth is often a mistruth. But we don't know the truth until we live the mistruth. And then we realize it's a mistruth and that there was always love there, which is where maximum growth happens. And that is why, like, if you say to a brand new entrepreneur that is entering the business world, they will get in and they'll be all excited. And they're like, man, I can't wait. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 15 businesses and like, man, I'm cranking. It's fucking exciting. And to the real business owner, you're like, good luck, 15 businesses. I can hardly run one. Like, it's tough. You're going to get your ass kicked. When you do well and you're thinking, wow, money's coming in, then the next second, like Kiyosaki says, there's two problems with money: too much money and not enough money. And you're always going to have one of them. Which one do you want? Okay. Those hidden tax bills suck. So my point is that when with the truths, most people live in their own truth, but their own truth is normally the thing that is causing their problems and is the problem because they're not looking at the other side of it. So I just wanted to clarify that, Matt, because when I'm thinking about things that work for me, they only work for me up until they don't work, because the human experience in itself is a mistruth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's very philosophical, but
no, 100%. And that's exactly what I wanted you to touch on, was that the fact that like people's perceptions define what truth is, right?
Yeah. And so I 100% believe in that things either work or they don't work. So if someone says I'm stuck and I'm not making money, yet they're justifying their position, but they're complaining about having no money, then fucking change it. Like, that's essentially all you can do. You can bitch and moan all you want, but you're going to die with that same bitching and moaning because nothing's going to change. You change, and then your results change, and that's simple. But there is only a small percentage of the population that want to have that responsibility. Like, it's easy to just complain about shit and live that way. Okay? But it depends. Do you want to be a 5%er? Do you want to be a 1%er? Or do you want to be, a 99%er? It all depends whether you want to fit in or whether you want to stand out. Most people say they want to stand out and they want to be the best and they want to be a 1%er. But when you look at their actions, they actually want to fit in. They're afraid of what people think. They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of criticism. They don't really know what they're trying to create. And this really comes down to your original question, Mark, which was the values. So can I jump into that and go into that, down that path? Cool. So real values are the study of axiology. And so when we're talking about axiology, the study of value systems and value structures, we're talking about two key questions. The first question is, where am I most valuable? And how do I perceive value in my own life? So it really answers those two questions. Now, if you get those aligned, they're normally your values. And so our brain is actually intrinsically wired to filter the world through our value structure. Now, when most people talk about values, they talk about a mistruth of values. And I don't know why it happened, but I think it's like most things, things that sound like a good idea that fit people's justifications as to why they have some shitty existence or poor results or whatever seem to be better than actually trying to figure shit out for most people. But if you go and study values, it really comes down to, where am I valuable? What is value and how do we classify value? Now, when I talk to most people, they say things like, well, I value kindness. Name me one person that doesn't. The question is, what does kindness mean to me? Now, kindness to me is different to somebody else. That's because it's filtered through my values. When I talk about, let's say, inspiration, what I'm inspired by isn't what other people are inspired by. Like my wife, Jess, she's inspired by creativity. So she's an amazing portrait artist. And she's also, she's writing a screenplay at the moment and all that. So creative writing and all that. She's a genius when it comes to her creativity. She also has other skills. So she's the general manager of our company. So her idea of what inspires her and what drives her is different to me. There are commonalities, but there's also differences. And this is why it's interesting in the world, because some people say, well, money's not important. And other people go, good luck trying to live without it. That's because I have a different set of intrinsic values. Some people, like I don't have kids, but I have people come up to me all the time and they go, you need to have kids. It's the best thing that ever happened to you. And I'm like, is it really? Are you saying that based on my values, me having kids is probably going to be the smartest thing that I ever do? Or is it going to be the thing that destroys my life? I'm not sure. But through that person's value structure, they're saying for them, it was inspiring and it was the thing that gave them purpose and meaning. But then now they're projecting that onto me. So that's our values. Now, these are intrinsically wired. Our brain naturally looks for it. So if you have a high value in wealth creation, you'll see money everywhere. You'll see opportunities to make money everywhere. Like I said before, I'm a kid. Everyone's drunk. I walk around and I collect gold coins and I realize I can make like 20 to 50 bucks washing dishes. Takes me like 20 minutes. I just made 50 bucks off of drunk people. Like, how cool is that? Now, at the same time, some of my friends were like, oh man, we're going out, ride our BMX bikes. They wanted to hang out with each other more than they wanted to make money. That's because they have a different set of intrinsic values. And some people project and go, yeah, but they're kids. Well, different kids are driven by different things. I've got a niece and nephew. From a young age, I watch them. They're both completely different in their personality. Why? Because they have different value structure. My nephew, Jordan, can't sit still. He's probably ADHD as well, like myself, my dad, my brother-in-law. Like, we've got a long family history of people being pretty shit at school because they couldn't sit still. Now, he loves building things from a young age. Like from 2 years of age, he could hold a full-size claw hammer and hammer shit together and build things. He's always building stuff. He's always playing and is physically has to move. If he can't sit still, or like if he can't move for longer than 5 minutes, he just gets erratic. So he probably has a high value on physical movement, and he also has a high value of social connection. We were out for dinner the other night. He's just turned 10. And I reckon we were at the pub, like for dinner. He knew like 3 people at the pub. He's a 10-year-old. These are adults. He's like, oh, there's blah, blah, blah from wherever. And he knows everyone from the footy. He just walks around and talks to people, right? This is a 10-year-old. So he's expressing his values. My niece, on the other hand, sits there and she does coloring in and drawing. And so she's expressing creativity, different value structure. For her birthday, all she wanted was creative stuff. She wanted new clothes. She loves like changing her clothes all the time. She loves coloring, doing artistic stuff. She can be around people for a short period of time, but she'll walk away, isolate herself, and go and do drawing and art and coloring stuff. She doesn't need the social engagement. Okay, different value structure. That's how we get our personalities, because through our values. There's also other ways as well, but this is just a quick analysis of it.
Is it, Mike? Sorry, I know you want to keep going, but how much, just quickly on that whole understanding of, because when I understood that, I was like, oh, no one fucking understands each other. Hence why they put all their shit on other people. Mm-hmm. This for me helped me understand my wife so much more, how we were different. I could then see what the things that were driving her. But how important is this when it comes to being a coach and understanding your clients, or understanding that in the sales process, or like how important is understanding values?
Well, when we say how important, it's essentially everything, because it's the main filter mechanism of a person's brain. I'll give you an example of this. So I had an event a couple of years ago. You might have been there on Melbourne Street in North Adelaide. Did you do our event live?
I was online in COVID.
Online.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So prior to that, we have this event, Melbourne Street, North Adelaide, nice little place with all cafes and everything like that. So I'm walking down the road with one of our clients, and she's who's at the event. I normally go out and have coffee and hang out with all of our community, because I try not to let dickheads into our events or community. So I actually like hanging out with our community, go out and have dinner with everyone and so on. Anyway, so we're walking down the road, and there's a whole bunch of cafes that had closed, and there were for lease signs on there. This was before COVID, and there was a bit of a like financial downturn that everyone was talking about. It was in the paper and all this sort of crap. So, you know, the media had created this over exaggeration of, you know, that there's this financial hard. Yeah. Now you look back on it, it was nothing, but, you know, at the time, a couple of cafes had closed and so on. So we're walking down the street. She sees these cafes that are closed and going, oh, you know, the economy's pretty tough these days. You know, people are struggling with money. And just at that moment when she was talking about that, we walked past a cafe, which is called You Are Cafe. It was slammed of people. And I'm sitting in my head, I'm like walking past, calculating how many people were in there, what the average spend was, how much they're making on profit margins on coffee.
Over a week. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm like going, shit, they're making some good coin. And in that moment also, a red Ferrari drove past. And what it showed me was she didn't notice the Ferrari and she didn't notice the cafe that was packed, but she noticed the for lease signs. When I saw the for lease signs, I was thinking about what could go in there that would be good for the area, that would generate an income. So one person sees opportunity, the other person sees a reason why there's problems and why there's chaos. Now, that's not saying that it's a belief system problem. It's just as different values. We walk past a cafe. If she's got a high value on kids, she would have seen families and kids and thought, this is a great place to take my family. You know, this looks like it's family friendly. I wouldn't have even noticed that. Like the thought wouldn't have even crossed my head. Now, my sister goes shopping for the kids to buy clothes. Her highest value is family. She walks out with shit for the kids. So she goes to buy stuff for herself and walks out with stuff for the kids. Why? Because it's her highest values. Now, this is where people sort of fuck up their life, because most people think that what they're doing is wrong because they're living with implanted values and fantasies that they think that they should be like other people versus being honest with themselves. And I'll give you an example. You're on Instagram, you scroll through, you look at a dude with a six-pack and a ripped body and everything, you go, wow, I wish I had a body like him. So you try to be like him. You go to the gym, you start eating well for a couple of days, and then the next second you're out with friends and you're binge eating and you're drinking alcohol and all that sort of shit. You wake up on Monday morning, you're all depressed, you feel like crap because you just gave up on your goal. But the truth is, it was never really your goal. You were trying to be like someone else. When you look at their life and you look at the disadvantages of having that value set, like in order to be ripped and have a six-pack and you know, to be lean and to eat that type of diet, you have to have a really high value of that. I personally don't want to do that. I like going out. I like eating with friends. I've got a high value on social connection. So could I do that? Yeah, but it would take away from my life, not add to my life. I'm happy sitting with a little bit more body fat and still being, you know, fairly muscular and strong and training hard, but I'm just not going to eat that diet where I'm eating chicken, broccoli, and rice, or counting calories all the time, or, you know, never being able to go out because I'm, you know, training for my next comp. So every value set has benefits and disadvantages. When I look at that person on social media now, I'm like, man, that must be tough. Not going out for meals. Now, some people will be on here going, yeah, but I go out for meals and shit like that. I'm sure Chris Bumstead and I'm sure, Jay Cutler, when he's winning Olympias and shit like that, isn't going out 4 times a week for meals with friends and family and hanging out with people. He's only thinking about training, sleeping, training, eating, recovery, and that's about it. That's his life. Now, the question is that the life that I want? To me, that's destructive to my life goals. But to him, that's the perfect thing. One of my clients is almost a billionaire. When I look at the stress that he has to deal with, he sometimes has to go to work and fire 100 people all at once who all hate his guts. People go, oh yeah, but he's lucky. Is he? How many times have you ever walked down the street and thought, most people fucking hate my guts because of the decisions that I have to make? Like, what did Alan Joyce from Qantas just make?
So the one who's just ghosted everyone and taken off.
Yeah, is it like 30 million bucks or whatever, or 40 million bucks or something like that? Most people go, oh, 40 million bucks, that's a dream. But now everywhere he goes, he is known and most people don't like him. But he probably has a super high value on high level business. He doesn't give a shit whether people like him or not. Okay, it just doesn't, because he might not have a high value on social connection. So we're all placed in our own, I believe we're all placed in our own lane to run our own race. But the problem is that as humans, in order to try to figure out what that lane looks like, we have to look at other people. And so we spend the majority of our life running out of our own lane in order to figure out where our lane is. Years ago, someone said, the only way you know where a boundary is when you cross it. Now, I believe that in life, the only way we know ourselves is by looking at others and seeing ourselves in them. But it takes a while to see that. And so you have to run out of your lane for a long period of time until pain's there for long enough that you go, you know what, shit, I need to readjust back into my own lane. And so we spend very little of our time in our own lane for a long period of time. The more and more you evolve as a person, the more and more you're self-aware and the more you do your own work, the more you run in your lane, but it's at the expense of everybody else. When you're younger, from what I've seen and from my own experience, and I could be wrong with this, but most people live most of their lives outside of their own lane in order to try and figure out who they are. So you have to go through Instagram and look at the dude with the six pack or the woman with the amazing body and go, I want to be like that. And then when you get there, you're like, shit, that's not quite me. And so you readjust and you micro adjust. Then you go, you know what? I think I might want a different job. And so you go out and you work that job and you go, you know what? That's not the job that I want. But then you readjust. If you keep doing that, you learn more and more about yourself throughout life. And I believe that life is just a discovery of the truths of the universe. And essentially, we're just trying to figure it out as we go along. And I really believe that the only thing that ever evolves is information, because every person passes along genetic material into either microorganisms, into another human being through kids or whatever. We're essentially passing on genetic material through the skin that we shed moment by moment that other people breathe in and shit like that. There's more of this science coming out now. But essentially, we're all exchanging genetic material, which genetic material is only information. And so the more that we learn, the more we pass on that genetic material. But all it does is it opens up new questions and deeper thoughts. So all we do in life is we solve one problem and we create another problem. And that's called life. When you know that that's part of it, and you know that the majority of your life you're going to be running outside of your own lane, you use other people in order to discover yourself versus using other people in order to try to be like them, which will just be absolute fucking self-destruction and carnage. So I can look at other people and go, wow, I'm really inspired by that person. What is it that inspires me? Like I might look at, a fit person. I go, I want to be more inspired. So I up my fitness levels and then I go, oh shit, I'm overtraining. This doesn't fit my lifestyle. So I back it off a little bit and then I find my perfect spot. But I did that by being self-aware enough to reflect. If I don't do that, I keep trying and trying and trying. And this is why people try for 30 years to achieve a goal and never get there, because they don't have the awareness to self-reflect enough in order to micro-adjust back to their own lane. I don't know if that answers the question.
The only thing I was just going to share is that there's a guy he was quite spiritual who, it was 2000 what year was it? About 2010, 2011. And it's when I started getting into corporate speaking, Michael. And I used to do a lot of work. And it's just funny that, so much of my first client was a very well-known psychologist in Melbourne. And I said, look, I want to understand. So I trained her, but then we did a bit of contra because I wanted to understand some psychology. She taught me about the DISC profile. Seriously. That was where we were fucking at in 2008, right? And I was fucking disappointed. So I ended up actually working with an Olympic sports psych. and made a guy who sold his business for 21 million a few months ago, never has to work again. And he's mentored me over the years. But we used to speak together, and he was kind of like the mind and I was the body. But in that time, just before I kind of got into work with him, I was working with a guy who was very spiritual, and he said exactly something along the lines of what you just said, but I just didn't get it. Like, seeing the other things in other people will reflect back the things in you that maybe you want to correct. Or I just honestly, I got it, but I didn't get it at all. And what you're saying right now is just like 100% been true for me in the story of the evolution of my journey, my vision. And I guess this is, I think, one of those things that has the clarity of what you've imparted, and obviously what I've learned from you, but obviously through life and other things, and the leveling up. You kind of have to keep going through, but your vision kind of grows so much more as you kind of believe in yourself and you follow your path. And it's only a case of, do you know what? I want to become an international presenter in 2011. So that led in the next 3 years to them being part of FMA, running businesses that became national and wanted to step my shit up. But I just had a fucking vision. I just started speaking and doing little 2-hour seminars and things, and that grew, right? So it was following my path, and that just rang so true for me. So I just firstly thank you, because it was, that was a moment. Thank you. But I guess as it relates to people and trainers, and as they kind of level up, and I always say, you've got to do time in trenches and see what it's like to go from, service to being a consultant if you love coaching. And then, you're now, Michael, running a one-to-many model, both online and in person, I imagine, right? So there was an evolution in your journey for PTs, I guess, in that. How do they kind of trust in themselves to work through this in the journey and start to come more from a place of, as you say, that inspiration versus desperation as their vision evolves?
Well, look, there's two ways of looking at that. First of all, you're going to learn through your mistakes, or you're going to learn through someone else's. So, like all the books behind me that I read are through essentially other people's learnings from their mistakes, or from the learnings that they learn from someone else that seem to work. So when you understand that you're going to learn from your mistakes or somebody else's, my recommendation is the first thing that you need to do as an individual is to get really clear of what you really want to do. When I was in the personal training industry, and Fitness First was probably the worst for this, and no offense to them, it was just, I went from working in a small privately owned gym that was a family gym. So we had really low staff turnover. It was essentially, as a personal trainer, you were paid working hours, and then you were given a little bit of a cut if you do extra, PT hours or whatever. So that model was different. When I went to Fitness First, it was essentially everyone was in there, you pay your rent, and it's all for themselves.
Get busy as fuck. Yep.
But what I saw was that the turnover of PTs was fucking ginormous, because we would get 18-year-old kids come in and they're like, I want to be a PT because I get to train people in the sun, and I get to exercise, and I get to get a tan and shit. And I'm like, we're in Adelaide, like summertime's fucking 40 degrees and super fucking hot, and all your clients are going to get burnt to shit and all of that. You're probably not going to be training too much outside in summer because it sucks. In winter, it's freezing cold, and it's like, anywhere from like 3 degrees to 16 degrees, and it's freezing and it's wet and it's shit. So you're probably going to have maybe 20 to 30 days of the whole year that you're actually going to enjoy being outside training as a personal trainer. Like they'd have these delusions and fantasies, or they'd come in, they're like, man, I can make like, back in those days, it was like, I can make $45 for a half an hour session. And it's like, you can, but you're going to be, spend a lot of time doing recruiting and shit like that first. And, you're going to have to talk to a lot of people. And I just watched all these people come in with these huge delusions, and they were in and out. Then back they're doing financial planning, or they're doing like, they're doing home maintenance, or they're doing, plumbing or whatever, because like most people, they just don't know what they want to do in life. So you're going to learn by your own trial and error, or you're going to get clear with what you really love to do. And when you love to do something, you're going to take the challenges with the rewards. And, as being a PT, I remember when I first started at Fitness First, and the PT manager there said to me, make sure you go out and you're talking to everyone, every day, and getting leads and all this stuff. I stood at the front counter for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I stood there from like 6 o'clock in the morning to about 9 o'clock at night, and I pretty much said hello to everybody that walked in the door. Within the first, in the first 8 weeks, I was doing 50 hours worth of PT. And the first 2 weeks, I was just doing my, I just stood there doing my own thing. And I remember that the PT manager came up and he's like, dude, you got to go out and you got to start like, getting leads and stuff. And I was like, dude, fuck off and leave me alone. All the other PTs were all these young kids that were, they were saying I don't know why this new PT's here. We don't even have enough work yet. You've recruited this other guy to come in, all of that. And we had like
leads.
Yeah, there was like 2,000 members and they're doing like 5 hours a week. I'm standing there for like not doing anything for 2 weeks, just saying hello to people and smiling and shaking their hands and going, good workout, and just building those relationships. And in a short period of time, I'd just walk up to anyone in the gym and I'm like, how's training going? Oh yeah, I'm struggling a little bit. What are your goals? And then bang, there's a sale. Then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. And I just kept going. But my point is that if you're not prepared to go through the challenges to get what you want, then it's probably outside of your values or you've got a fantasy there. If you don't see the challenge in the goals, it's a fantasy. Like, yeah, having a six-pack is fucking sweet. Everyone should have one because it's easy, right? All I got to do is just cut my calories. It's a piece of cake. Until night 2, you're sitting there at nighttime, your brain's like, chocolate, 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 chocolate. And then your friends ring up and they're like, do you want to go out Friday night? And you're like, oh, fuck, I can't. If you don't think about all that shit, then it's not a real goal because it's not well thought out and it's probably outside of your values. If you want to build a business, building a business is tough. You've got to do lead generation. You've got to do sales. You've got to do marketing. You've got to do branding. This is all the stuff that I go through with business owners right now. Because most of them have a fantasy. Like if you're a plumber and you're a good plumber, you go out and you start your own plumbing business. And then the next second you realize you know jack shit about business. You're a good plumber, but you're not a good business owner. They spend 4 years doing a plumbing apprenticeship and 0 years learning about business. And then they go, business coaches are fucking stupid. I don't know why you'd have one.
Dude, same as every exercise science person, allied health professional, they get taught
100%,
nothing, right?
100%, right? Like it's just so ridiculous that like, if you want to be good at something, you have to go through a lot of stress testing, right? There's a lot of pressure. You can't just bypass all that stuff. You have to go through the stress and the pressure in order to learn what you need to learn. Real goals, someone who's setting real goals looks at that stuff and goes, here's how I'm going to mitigate that. Someone who doesn't comes in with a fantasy. And most people go into the PT industry with a fantasy, which is why back in my days, I don't know what it's like now, but turnover of PTs was ginormous.
Still
and
huge,
now,
if not more.
the coaching industry is the same. Like I've watched people blow up on, Instagram and TikTok and all that. And I've had people that out of fucking nowhere, I've known them for years. These people can't even get their shit together for long enough of a period of time to achieve anything. And then all of a sudden they become a coach and they write on their Instagram, Australia's #1 mindset coach. And I'm like,
yeah, what?
Okay. 6 months later, they're out. But they just built a 20, 30, 40,000, following Instagram following. Now, I know coaches who come and work with me who hire my services. They have 500,000 followers. Yeah, I make 10 times the amount of money that they make. Why? Because doing one thing well isn't the game plan. Like you've got to get really clear of what you're trying to do, what you want, why it's important. Because until you really find that drive within yourself, I guarantee when you start getting punched by the challenges that you're going to go through, you're going to want to give up. And anything that's worthwhile is stepping into a boxing ring. You're going to get punched way more than what you expect. In fact, you're probably going to get the shit kicked out of you. And the majority of the time you want to go and give up when the punches hit hard. But if you love what you do and you love the game of boxing, you'll keep getting back in the ring. And every now and again, you get your hand held up as a champion. And I just remind people of this all the time is like, if you're not prepared to get the shit kicked out of you doing what you love, then it's not really what you love. Go and find what that is, because that's the thing you're going to be skilled at. As a business owner, we went through COVID. I went from having 16 staff to back down to 1. We've gone through periods of time where we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we've gone through times where we've made, millions. So this is just part of the game that I play, and it's tough. It's really tough, but I love it. It's why I wake up, because it challenges me. So my recommendation is, if you're getting into that industry, into the coaching industry, you've got to really find out why you love it. Now, you can be one of the shit coaches, and there's a lot of them out there, just like there's a lot of shit PTs out there. There's a lot of shit doctors. I would say the majority of every industry is shit, because people don't really know what they want to do. And so they're going to do the bare minimum. When you go to a doctor and a doctor's finished, and I've worked with some of these, you go out, they finish medical school, they don't know what they want to do. They become a doctor. Now they're making money, so they go out and buy the Mercedes, they get the house, they have kids, and now they're fucked and stuck. It's the golden handcuffs, right? They're handcuffed to their paycheck. They're not really doing what they would love to do, but they're doing the bare minimum to keep earning what they're earning to create the lifestyle so then it looks like they're succeeding. And that's how most people operate. But they're never going to get beyond that unless they break those golden handcuffs and go and figure out what they love to do. And that's really tough. It's really confronting. So if you do want to be a good coach and it's something that you love to do, it's going to be way harder than what you think. It's going to take way longer than what you think. There is going to be a lot of punches that you're going to get hit by, but over time, what you'll find is you slowly start to stand out above the rest, and you'll probably be in the top 1 to 5%. It's not that hard to be in the top 1 to 5% if you really love what you do, because you'll just stick at it. You know, I've been in the coaching game now for 11 years, and I've seen thousands of coaches come and go. Many of them who claim to be Australia's best or the best course ever or whatever. But at the same time, you know, I get the people, like we've had the ex-head of Air Asia come and do our events. We've had Wayne, who owns Rising Sun Films. They do all the digital animation for The Hobbit and stuff like that. We had some of the guys from the Redbacks. We've had AFL, you know, professional athletes. We've had psychologists. You know, we get medical doctors frequently come. You know, we have all different types of people, a lot of PTs, stuff like that. It's really cool when you then start to stand out because you get to associate with other people that are in the top 1 to 5%. If you're just going to be average, you're probably going to deal with a lot of average people. And that's why these days, like, you know, I get messages where it's like, I'm really depressed and life sucks. And I'm like, look, I'm not your guy. Okay. I can probably help you, but I'm not that guy. What I'm going to tell you is shit you don't want to hear. It's going to be really tough and you're going to probably hate my fucking guts. And you're probably going to write a nasty Facebook post because I'm going to give you a reality check and you're not going to like it. But to those who are in the top 5%, that's what they want is they want someone to put a boot up their ass again because that's what they love. That's the challenge. So, you know, you have to decide who you want to work with. Could I work with a lot more people if I just dealt with the usual mental health problems? Yeah. Would my podcast be bigger if I dealt with the usual mental health problems and the usual shit that people go through and life's tough and you just need to be positive and all that sort of shit that 90% of social media promote? Yeah. But is that the thing that really separates you? Not really. Now, if you go and have a look at the greatest scientists on the planet, most people don't know who they are. Why? Because the top 5% associate with the top 5%. The top 5% know who they are, but no one else does. Because averages associate with averages and greats associate with greats. So you just have to decide who you want to be and how you want to play the game. There's a lot less of the greats than there are the averages, but you have to decide what you want to do.
Yeah. So how important for you has actually been, because you're great at what you do, but I know how important you recognize marketing to be, for example.
Yeah.
And I know how much you've taken ownership of it, which I think has just been, you know, how fucking important is that, right? Because you're the one who drives the team and drives the standards, right?
Yeah. So I believe that life is about decisions, right? So everything that we do moment by moment is all about decisions. And the word decide means to cut away or to cut off. And the difference between a choice and a decision is what I give as the Chinese menu. When you go into a Chinese shop and they give you this huge fucking menu and you look through there and you start looking, you're like, wow, I could have that and I could have that. And after a while you get really confused, and because there's so much stuff that you want to eat on there. The more choices you have, the more stressed you become and the harder life becomes. The faster you make decisions, the faster you get shit done. Like if I walk into a restaurant and I go, I want that, my food gets cooked straight away because I've made that decision. If I sit there and I keep looking at the menu, it gets more and more stressful. Now, most people live life in choices, not decisions, which is why life is tough for them. Now, when we're talking about decisions, I believe that every person has a point in time where they're going to make a decision that alters their life by that 1%. And in marketing, what I try to do is I'm trying to market to different people at different levels of that 1%. So, for example, like our Thrive Time event is for driven people that want to be more, do more, and want to get clarity on their own success map in life. Now, I think without it, you're rolling the dice, because I did for many, many years and I never really got the life that I wanted. Once I got clear, and I work on this. In fact, I spent the last 3 days updating my success map for life, which is what I go through in that event, which is building 3 key pillars. What fulfills me? What's my direction in life and where am I headed? Long-term and short-term. And then from there, what are the performance principles that I can tune my mind into to get me to be consistent to be driven against my fears, my worries, my concerns. And how do I tap into that drive, that intrinsic drive within me where I'm not driven by outside circumstances or what other people think? I do shit because it's what I love to do and it's what I'm born to do. If you listen to Conor McGregor when he was winning, he was like, I am born to be champion. He knew it. It was an intrinsic knowing. Now, when you listen to any greats, it's an intrinsic knowing that this is what they're put on earth to do. Now, if you listen to great fighters, they will say, I'm just born to fight. Now, I believe that everybody's born to do something. You've got to tap into that, because when you do, that's where it unleashes the right mindset that you can train to stay consistent and driven. So those 3 pillars essentially create your success map. Without it, you'll have bits and pieces and you'll fuck around and you'll fumble. And I did it for many, many years, and most people do. But once you've got that, then from there, I think it's just then about being consistent. And like I said, every time life. Sorry, let me go back. There was something that the philosopher, I think it was Tillard, spoke about, or D. Chudin, and he spoke about this term called a noosphere. And a noosphere is essentially spheres of knowledge or spheres of value, I guess you could say, or mind spheres that we grow into. And what I believe, and this is from my experience of working with tens of thousands of people now, is we are essentially in levels. So the level that I'm playing at isn't the level that you're playing at, Matt, which isn't the level that Mark's playing at. We're all playing at different levels depending on our values in different areas of life. Now, what will happen from my experience and from what I've seen working with tens of thousands of people is that we will be in a stage where we're learning lessons and everything like that, and life's cruising along and we seem to be doing okay. But then the next second, life starts to get really tough and challenging, and then we start to self-reflect and things stop making sense and we lose our clarity and everything like that. That's normally a whole bunch of tests that are now starting to get displayed to see if we're ready to go to the next level. And like school, you can't go to the next grade until you've passed the exam or the tests. So life will give you tests to see if you're ready to go to that next level. Now, if you fail the test, you get to repeat the grade. Now, because most people don't see life as lessons and tests, they normally fuck up the tests, which then means that they keep repeating, which means they're stuck at the same predictable patterns. Now, we all know someone who has dated the same guy or girl that just has a different name and a different haircut, but they're the same fucking person with the same traits. That's why some people be like, I've had 3 narcissistic partners who have all treated me like shit. And I'm like, interesting. Because there's a lot of people. Yeah. I keep making money and losing money, making money, losing money, making money, losing money. And I can never seem to get ahead. Like, I hear this shit all the time, right? What it is they keep failing the test. And that's because they're not learning the lesson so that then they can go to that next level. Now, at the next level, I've never met a person who says, shit, Michael, I've got too much money. Right? Now, yes, they will have money compared to I remember when I couldn't pay my $30 phone bill and I was like, fuck, I'm broke. Now I'm like, shit, I've got to hire a bunch of new staff and I don't have enough cash. Right? So it's just different. Like, to me, paying a $30 phone bill, I wouldn't even think, like, I go put fuel in my car and I don't even look at the price. I just put fuel in and I drive out. So that doesn't bother me anymore. But now looking at staff wages and the amount of money that we spend on marketing and stuff like that sometimes I'm like, oh man, that hurts a little bit. Like, ugh. So it's just different levels, right? So everyone has financial problems. Everyone has health problems. Everyone has mindset problems. Everyone has fucking relationship problems, family problems. It depends what level you're playing the game at. Like, some people have really shitty relationship problems, whereas some people have high value relationship problems. Some people have high level financial problems and other people have really shitty financial problems. Everyone's just at different levels. So that's the noosphere. How did I get onto that? There was a question there.
I just want to check.
ADHD.
Just want to check with you, Michael. Are we good for time? Are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good to keep going. Yep.
Awesome.
You guys just keep me off. I'll talk until everyone's ears bleed.
No, it's fucking awesome. It's awesome. This is probably the quietest that me and Mark have been on a podcast ever. So
100%. And values, vision, levels. Does that jot your memory?
Yeah. So we were talking about values, and then it went on to I was talking about someone's success map of life and sort of staying in their lane. But it really, because you asked me the question about like coaching and coaches and all that stuff. If you really want to be a good coach, it takes a lot of effort. Like I spent this is what's crazy, right? The majority of coaches don't make $1 million a year. Like based on statistics, right? 56% of businesses fail in the first 4 years in Australia. Like that's the actual statistic that I found from, I think it was 2 years ago. So 56% of businesses fail in the first 4 years, right? Then when you have a look at it, 96% of businesses don't have more than 4 staff, which essentially means that they're self-employed or a small business. Now, if you go to 92% of businesses never do over $2 million a year in turnover. Now, when I look at that statistic, when I look at that statistic, I go, okay, it's really, really hard to build a business. It's really, really tough and challenging to grow something that's worthwhile, that makes an impact. Yet when you speak to most coaches, they go, I want to make an impact. I want to build something that's big. But the truth is that your chances of doing that are really, really fucking small. Now, then you've got to ask the question, why? Why are they so small? Now, what most people think they want, versus what they actually want and what they're prepared to do are two different things. Like if you want to build a big business, it's really tough. You've got to learn a lot of things. Like as I mentioned before, you've got to do staffing, you've got to do marketing, you've got to do branding. And that's the question was on how important marketing is. So, you have to go through a lot of shit in order to learn these lessons. And, I only had a coach a little while ago that I'm now working with. They've got I think 500,000 followers, and I make probably 6 times the amount of money that they make, and with lesser followers. And they said, how do you do it? And I said, well, here's the thing. You're good at the top of funnel marketing, but you're not good at anything else in that funnel or in the business process. So I'll help you to build all that out. But there's other things that you have to deal with. Like in order to deal with staff, you have to be both you've got to be supportive, but you've also got to be challenging. I challenge staff, and sometimes I just have to say to staff, look, you can't take on the challenge. Like in order to do anything of value in life, you have to solve problems. Now, if you're a staff member, you essentially coming to work to solve a problem. You need to know what problem it is that you're going to solve. Are you solving a marketing problem, as in we don't have enough leads, which, that then is you're probably going to be part of a marketing department. If you're not creating enough, if we don't have enough attention, then you might be part of like a front of funnel, marketing strategy where we're either running ads or we're creating content. If you're doing sales, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? It's a cash flow problem. So you need to make sure that you don't just go, hey, I got a sale. It's like, where's my fucking money? Because that you're solving a money problem. You have to know exactly what problem that you're solving, both as a business owner and as a staff member and so on. So in order to do that, optimum growth happens at a borderline of challenge and support. If you over challenge people, it crushes them. If you over support them, it makes them weak and fragile. Our society is attached to over supporting people, which is why the majority of the mental health industry isn't getting results. Now I'm going to get criticized because there's going to be a whole bunch of motherfuckers that are going to listen to this stuff and go, oh, I disagree with that.
I love your thread, by the way, on social media. I love your thread when you put this shit up, because people just come for you and you break it down, because you've got layers to what you understand. And that's what I love about what you're sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't share the deep stuff on social media, that's for sure, because it's like Einstein putting out his equations. Most people would just look at it and just go like, what the fuck? And not like they just scroll past it. So
But you poked the bear just by a concept or a theory, and because of their lack of understanding or the depth of what you're going to say, like you already know where it's going to go because of their shit and their story. But I love that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got a couple of people in the emergency services that want to me to create a charity with them, or a charitable organization where we can work with emergency services to deal with PTSD, because, I can't say that I cured their PTSD, but what I'm saying is that they were diagnosed with PTSD, but now they don't have those symptoms anymore. So you call that whatever you want to call that. Now, I can't say that I can do that with everybody, but the ways that I think about things are different, which was able to help them. So they want to implement that with emergency services. Now, I've had that same pattern happen with the military as well, where we had a whole bunch of people come through from the military, and we were able to help them with their PTSD and their mental issues that they had going on. Because I guess I think outside the box, and it's, you know, I really don't believe that anyone's broken. I don't believe that anyone's damaged. I believe that life happens for us to learn the lessons that we need to learn so that we can keep evolving, because the only thing that all living organisms seem to do is evolve, and anything that doesn't evolve essentially dies off. So we either have a choice, we're either going to evolve or we're going to die off. So like, that's just basic biology, right? Like, I'm not quoting anything that's fucking foreign. So when I look at that, I'm like, okay, if all these incidents are happening within our life, we have a choice. We're either going to evolve beyond that pattern or that problem for whatever reason it is, or we're going to stay stuck in it, and life is going to reward us with either trauma, tragedy, pain, or something that's a wake-up call to get us to fucking grow. Now, after working with tens of thousands of people, there seem to be patterns there that when people are off track with their life, tragedy and trauma tends to be a wake-up call that there's more to life than the way that they were living. Now, if people can disprove that, I'm cool with that. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. Like, I don't know everything. I don't have the fucking rule book to life. But what I'm saying is there just seems to be patterns there. So what I want to look at is that if all these people going through these depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, or have all these problems, I want to go and look at how do they benefit these individuals? What's it trying to teach them? What do they need to learn from it? Is it a gift or is it a nightmare? How do we use it? All of that sort of stuff. Like, if I could look back at my childhood and go, I was traumatized to fuck. But does that help my life? Does that help my future? Or does it reinforce a pattern of the past, which keeps me trapped in the past?
Truth versus what's useful, right?
Yeah. And just because something happens to us. I mean, if you look, like, let's go back and study psychology, right? 50% of all human perception is error. So if you ask someone their story, half of it is true and half of it is error. Now, if you ask anyone in any field of science which part of it is true and which part of it is error, they go, well, I don't fucking know. So, but what science has proven is that 50% is error. So when someone is talking to you, how much of it is truth? How much of it is mistruth? What is mistruth? No one really knows. So, but every time someone tells me their story, right? So I have someone who comes in and says, this thing happened to me and it's bad and this is why I've been held back. And I go, okay, cool. 50% of that story is bullshit. Even the stuff I tell myself, 50% of it is bullshit. Because it's in error based on the way that the human brain works. It's a filtration mechanism through our values. So we only see the world through our values. We see it through our beliefs, our current beliefs. We see it through the meanings that we attach to things. And so half of our life could be complete and utter bullshit. So I look at it and I go, well, if that's true, and I'm using the past as a reference to build my future, is that a good thing, a bad thing? Am I using the correct data? Am I using the incorrect data? Like, I don't know. So why not create a future that I can grow into that's better for me based on the skill sets, the values that I have, the beliefs that I can create? Why not create something that gives me a future that I actually love to live versus one based on circumstance from a past that half of it may be bullshit that I keep reinforcing? So that's just the way that I think through things. And you know what? I've had plenty of people debate me on this stuff. It doesn't bother me. Like, what I care about is that there are a percentage of the population out there that look at their past and go, you know what? I can be better. I can do better. They're the people I want to work with. They're the people that wake up one day and go, you know what? My life's fucked and I need to change it. And that was me, 21 years of age. I remember listening to a Tony Robbins audio and I spent $229 to buy that audio and I had $230 in my bank and I had to put fuel in the car to get to work. So I used every cent that I had to buy that audio product and I had to go borrow money to put fuel in the car. One of the first things that he did was he said, you got to find something that you're grateful for. It took me 2 fucking weeks, 2 weeks. And the one thing that I was grateful for, and I remember the moment that it clicked. I remember exactly where I was in that moment. It was that I had legs and I could walk. That's where I started from at 21. That's how shit my mindset was and how shit my life was, right? And so that moment there, the moment of getting out of bed that night was a decision that changed that trajectory by a small thing. And what I noticed is that over time, those small decisions that take courage, where you get so fed up of doing what you're doing and you've had enough, they're the things that change people's lives. And so I want to work with those people that have had enough, not the people that are reinforcing all their shit that get rewarded from our society. Yeah. And it's a society thing, right? Like, there's more people who are living an average boring, mediocre life, that are trying to save everybody else. And before I spoke about the word compassion, the word passion means to suffer. The word compassion means to suffer with others. And so when we're compassionate, we tune into the suffering of others, which brings up our own past traumas that we haven't dealt with and worked through in order to find the benefits in them, which then bring that shit up so that we can work through it. Now, if we don't work through it and we reinforce it, then we keep reliving it over and over and over again. Now, our society, because most people aren't responsible and don't deal with their past shit to find the benefits in how it helps them, everyone tries to save everybody else. So you go into the healthcare system and there's a whole bunch of people who have really shitty health, who have had past traumas in regards to health or why ever they're there, that you go in there and you go, you know what, I've got heart disease. And they go, well, it's not you. Don't change your lifestyle. Take tablets, take pills instead of running your fat ass around the block and doing something different and changing the food that you eat, because you're going to fucking die and you're going to leave your kids here. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to have a parent. What do you want to do? That harsh reality check could be the one thing that changes their life, but people are afraid to say it, right? Because it's harsh and they might get judged and they might get criticized. And so now doctors can't do that. Doctors can't say that. Health professionals can't say that because you get taken to the cleaners, because there's a whole bunch of fucking pricks that sit in Parliament House that then create laws that say you can't make people feel uncomfortable and all this sort of shit. So we've got this society where everyone walks on eggshells. Yet the majority of people want to get these great results, but no one can say anything. They're all everybody's not everybody. I'm misrepresenting that, but there's a whole bunch of people in our society that can't say anything because we've just been tuned that we need to save everybody instead of looking in the fucking mirror and going, I don't need to save anybody. I don't need to do anything for anybody. I need to be better. I need to be better. And when I am better and I find answers in my own life, then I can go give them to others and I can help them through that journey. That's where you get great coaches. And so when it comes to marketing, what I do is I throw certain things out. I try to help people, but I also throw triggers out as well, because there's that one person who woke up this morning and went, I'm sick of this shit. Something has to change. And they're the person that I want to talk to.
Michael, can I share this, mate? I probably spoke to you one of my lowest points a couple of years ago. Now, you probably don't even realize it, but you remember. And it was when I left a previous business. Mm-hmm. And Matt, was before I was chatting to you. And I was lost as fuck. Like, I really stepped out. It was very clear we're heading in different directions, and it all happened very quickly. And I even asked you, dude, I'd fucking sell your course because I love it, right? And I thought maybe I don't know if you remember that convo.
Yeah.
But then what I realized really quickly, and this was the thing, and it's not that I don't absolutely love, and this is why I would say to anyone, absolutely go and do. I did like 3 or 4 of your courses, absolutely loved it, and I go back and probably I'd actually, life design what's the first course?
Thrive Time.
Called again? Yes, Thrive Time. I would 100% go back and do a refresh because it was a game changer, and I come at it from a different mindset to what I did. I reviewed those notes probably every quarter, pretty much since I did it a few years ago. So for me, what you just said, and I think this is if anyone's gone through a hard time, I literally was like, all right, well, blank page. I went down to my beach house, said to my wife, I've got to go for a few days. I've got to think about what the fuck I want to do. Because I spoke to you and I realized very quickly, I can't fucking work for anyone. Like, I can't. And I'm way too capable. And at that point, I'd probably spent close to $1 million on mentoring and education and done a lot of good things and had a lot of experience. But then when I sat down and I went back over you talking about inspiration and values and mission and vision and the skill sets that I had, it kept coming back to this industry that I love, right? And I wanted to help coaches, but I wanted to help firstly start with the busy ones. That was who I was, right? The busy, successful people that wanted to go to other levels. And all the things I had done, we could coach on. And I knew that one of the missing parts to me, and this is why I said marketing, right, is because Matt is incredible at what he does. And he was the number one guy I'd worked with at Your Social Voice, who was just, he cared about marketing as much as I cared about the skill set and the growth in our industry. So I just want to say, firstly, that was a game changer for me. And I would encourage anyone, right, regardless of, even if you're just like, so many people that I speak to that are even doing well are going through various stages of just averageness, and average could be at $2,500, $3,000, $4,000 a week and still just going, doesn't feel right, or you're just like, I really want to course correct and take it to the next level. But that was amazing for me. I think looking back at that, I just want to say thank you. I don't know if you know that, but that for me was a defining moment where I was like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, seriously, even if I was helping you making $250,000 a year doing sales, it wasn't going to be the thing that lit my fucking heart up. I loved your course, but equally, I love to create. And that was one of my highest values. And if I was just selling things, that was where I kind of got to with the previous business. I was selling something that had evolved so much that it wasn't now what I kind of believed in or the direction I wanted to go. And I know what that feels like, right? It was just off track. So thank you, because it helped me redesign what I'm doing. It brought Matt into my life. We're now reconnecting a few years down the track where we've been able to build something really fucking cool that I love and enjoy and has evolved so much. Hasn't it, Matt, in a couple of years?
Oh boy,
right?
It's been a journey.
a lot. And we're finding our thing. You know, social media is a lot of fun now. I enjoy it. But Michael, I think we could take this in so many different tangents. I think it went completely differently to what I'd planned, but I think it was even better. So
yeah.
Just want to say, mate, I feel like we could just maybe use 2 or 3 words and then go off on a million tangents. And I'd love to do it on a different one, of which I'll think about. Mate, are you open to another one down the track, mate?
Oh,
I'll do one later this afternoon if you want. We'll do part.
Do a part 2.
Yeah, mate. I'm always happy if you know, like, if I can just inspire one person to think differently, or this was the person that is sitting there going, I fucking hate this guy, but you're thinking about what I said, then I've done my job. Because either way, both of those 2 people are thinking about how things can be done differently and the changes that they need to make in their own life. And so, yeah, I just hope that one person walks away with something from this.
Well, mate, they absolutely will. And I know the one thing I would say is that we didn't get to share a lot of what you do now, but I think it'd be a part 2. And the thing is, I see a lot of guys go from PT and then looking further into coaching. So I'll just say this, please go. I will get some links to this podcast. I'll put the stuff up that you do at Mojo, because there's no bullshit. And I really love that the tools were so practical. I feel like the tools we didn't get into, which I absolutely love, balancing out your life and the things that make you you. But is there any one last thing that you'd love to share, or anything as a final wrap up to today, mate?
Yeah, look, I mean, greatness is within everyone. The hard part is like all buried treasure, you have to dig a lot of fucking holes in order to find it. And you know, if you can find tools which are like the metal detector that allow you to dig in the right places, you'll find it a lot faster. And so I think that anyone who's listening to this, I guarantee you're so much better than what you think. There's so much more than what you think. And life can be whatever you want it to be, both beneficial and non-beneficial. But if you just realize that every day you get to wake up and create something or destroy something, and you probably are going to do both. You can't create without destroying. Like, in order to create a business, you have to destroy other things. You might be destroying friendships. You might be destroying, people's, perception of you. Like, there's a whole different, a whole bunch of different things. But you really need to get clear with who you are, what you're here to do, or if not, you'll do what most people do, which is waste their life running in everybody else's lane, trying to figure out what they really want to do. And I think that's a waste of a life. The faster you get on track and get clear with who you are and what you're here to do, the faster you can just stay in your own lane and do your thing. Micro adjust consistently, and I guarantee you'll be in the top 1 to 5% of the whole entire population. And you'll live a life that everyone else looks at and just goes, how the fuck did you do it? Yeah. But it's also tough to do that as well. Okay. So, yeah.
I was going to say, one of the big takeaways that I got from this conversation, and actually connected a few dots for me personally, which was awesome. So thank you, Mike. But one of the things that I got was, I heard a long time ago this saying that the man who loves to walk will walk far further than the man who's walking to get to the destination, right? The man who loves to walk will walk farther than the man who wants the destination. And I feel like that encapsulates so beautifully, like what you were talking about when it comes to values, but also when it comes to fantasies. People want the destination without the journey, without the action that it takes, right? Which was another dot that connected for me when you're talking about, people that have fantasies versus values. So that was super valuable for me personally, brother. And I would love the opportunity to jump on again with you. This has been awesome.
Let's do it.
Before we wrap up, where can people find you, Mike?
So most of my social media threads are Michael Mojo 00. Instagram, it's just the other way around because some asshole hacked that one, so we had to change the O's and the zeros around. But if you just type in Michael Mojo, it'll pop up. Also, if you just Google it, it'll pop up with events and stuff like that we operate. I'm sure if someone
what about
wants to find me.
Your closed Facebook group as well is pretty handy for tips.
So I mean, there's a heap of different Facebook pages that we have. So we've got, for business owners, we've got a group called the No BS Business Hacks. I've sort of went off track with that a little bit. They can find me on there. I've been doing more regular posting in that group again. So we're just cranking that back up. I've got a podcast called The Underestimated Entrepreneur. We're about to go into season 2 for that. So that'll crank back up. I think in the first year we did, I think it was about 380 episodes or something like that. So we fucking cranked it pretty hard for the first year. My team said to me, how do you want to do this? And I said, let's just do one a day. And that went a bit too crazy, so I had to back it down a little bit. But we also chucked up other people's interviews and stuff like that they did with me as well. So you can listen to that. But yeah, we've got, so there's the No BS Business Hacks Facebook group. There's also, if you're part of our Thrive Time community, we've got a group called Mojo Insiders. And then I also run a business event called Business Odyssey as well, Business Growth Odyssey. But you need to be doing at least 300K a year minimum to be part of that group. Right up to, I think the biggest we've got at the moment in that group is about 26 million a year in turnover. So yeah, that's more of a for people who want to scale their business that are already, making stuff happen.
Amazing. We will share those along and we'll share them as links in the post. Mate, again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And yes, part 2, we will definitely make happen.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Mike. Take care, brother.